a lot of good initiatives in France with Fondation de la Mer, in which you are started already with the collaboration with private companies on how to cope, first of all, how to first protect the sea on one side, on the other side also how to contribute to reduce the impacts of climate change.
Yes. I mean, you know, knowing that we are a little bit late, I'm not going to describe all the activities of Fondation de la Mer, but indeed it's a foundation that has been created in 2015 by people passionate about the oceans in France, from, you know, people in the French Navy to scientists to business people to navigators and sailors that race. And it's been really progressing incredibly in terms of its scope of activities. I think it started as a foundation that were like many foundations, really focused on protection and salvaging. So there was a lot of activities around plastic retrieval. I think the foundation is now supporting about 250 NGOs on plastic retrieval and actually moving from retrieval to actually recycling, because this is obviously something that makes more sense, not simply retrieving and then having the plastic go back into the garbage cans or the landfills. It has also taken the long view by really getting involved into sponsoring research with PhDs and grants and a lot of activity there, but also the long view by working in particular with the French Minister of Education on developing educational kits for children at different stages of their maturity. What I'd like to insist upon now, because I think this is the theme that we are talking about, is the involvement with the private sector, which is the thing that you see on the right side of the slide. And it has taken a couple of things. One is a traditional way to engage with corporate, you know, enterprises, get funding so that the foundation can take its own projects and move them forward. This is a traditional way of funding for foundations, I think, in many countries. But the foundation took an approach that is very different, saying, you know, we don't want to only receive money from corporations. We want to help corporations change their own footprint on the oceans. And it came with something that you probably have in one of the slides, Alessio, which is the ocean framework. This is the last slide in what I had sent, if you can show it, if you don't mind. Last one. Move forward. Yeah, this one. I mean, it's difficult for me to see it on the thing, but hopefully everybody can see it. I mean, this essentially takes the SDG 14 from the United States and take it in and breaks it into 3 blocks. And for each one of them, there is a series of topics. And as you can see them, different measurement metrics and everything. And I think this thing has then formed the base for a ocean approved label that has been launched in 2021. That is essentially taking this plus an auditing process, plus, you know, extreme vigilance to make sure that companies not only measure their impact on the oceans, but are on a trajectory that allows them to mitigate and diminish their impact on the oceans. This has been actually very supported by the Ministry of the Seas in France, both at its launch in 2021, but even today there was a new meeting with the new French Minister of the Seas, and he's very keen to move this forward. It has also had success with some companies that have been embracing this. It's very true, and maybe Andrea has also a perspective on this. It's very true that many corporations have been taking their impact in general, line by line. You know, people work on CO2 emissions, people work on plastics, people work on things. But this approach, which is an integrative approach in terms of how everything has an impact on the oceans, is something that was fairly novel. It still is, and is very attractive for some companies, at least the ones that are close to the oceans, of course, but even more, we have an example of a company called Interxion, which has been the first one to get the ocean approved label, that is managing data centers. Data centers in France is part of a multinational group that manages about 200 data centers in the world, and they use this grid to look really at their operation and ways to mitigate the impact on the oceans and diminish their impact. And I must admit, this ocean approved framework and label is the reason why I took the initiative about a year and a half ago to start talking with Alessio at MES, to the Nominen Foundation in Finland, hopefully to many more in the future, so that this can be scaled. I mean, you know, this kind of stuff, talking to multinational companies, has only relevance if it's at the global scale, and that's what we have the ambition to do. I'll stop here and let you, Alessio, drive the conversation.
I will maybe translate a few things to the public, but just one thing, as I told before, we met in Lisbon just a couple of months ago. We signed an agreement. We present this agreement to the all the, let's say, the big public of the Ocean Conference. So we also come out with one strong idea, that is to accelerate marine ecosystem restoration. So we consider that this is one of the big objectives that our foundation have, also to cope with climate change. We consider that restoring seagrass in particular, it's one of the key activity that we can do on one side for reducing carbon emissions, on the other side to adapt to improve our capacity to adapt to climate change. So this is very much the challenge that our foundations together are launching for the next decade. And maybe, Philippe, very soon we will be able to communicate a big initiative in the Mediterranean for really reversing the trend of habitat loss of Posidonia and other seagrass.
Definitely, and this is an element for which I think having a strong European coalition and being able to work on this is absolutely critical. But I would also say that this is for me a must. If we don't do that, we are unable individually to respond to the demands of major stakeholders, and the opportunity that you are referring to, Alessio, is with a major global company. And if we are individual foundations, we will never be able to respond to their needs. That's why the coalition is so important, having at its core, MEDSI, Fondation de la Mer, and when it is relevant, obviously the nominal foundation in Finland. But as you said, this is a second pillar of our activities together. One is to embrace the world of corporations, offer them some tools, as I was describing, but really being able to tackle massive programs like the one you are alluding to restore seagrass and ecosystems in the Mediterranean.
Thank you, Philippe. And I know that you have to go now. And so I really wish to thank you very much. And also to stress, and then I will switch to Italian, because I really want to share our thoughts with those that are not familiar, not fluent.
And I'm sorry, I spoke very fast. I have to go now, but I appreciate the invitation and wish you the end of the good meeting. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.